Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Representatives from California's Oakland Police Department are asking for the public's help this week as they investigate the terrifying suspected kidnapping of a young woman, a crime that was partially captured in harrowing video footage. The whole thing began sometime around 3:30 p.m. on March 4th when the victim, believed to be a woman in her early 20s, was walking along the 1800 block of 98th Street. Suddenly, a man driving in a gray sedan attempted to hit her with his vehicle before getting out of the car and punching several times. A bystander who witnessed what was unfolding began filming on their phone, capturing the footage that you're now seeing on screen. In it, the unknown male suspect can be seen approaching the female victim and forcing her inside the vehicle. According to police, during the struggle, the woman yelled multiple times that she was being kidnapped. Moments later, the car raced off with her inside. Despite multiple people who can be seen driving past on either side of the road while this all took place, apparently no one stopped to try to help or intervene. Authorities say that they were able to later recover the vehicle used in the incident, but unfortunately it was stolen and had been dumped in East Oakland by the time it was found. Police are now asking members of the public for their help locating the woman and the man seen in the disturbing video. So far, neither of the identities are known. The female victim is described as a black woman between 20 and 22 years old, 5 foot 5 inches tall, and weighing around 140 pounds. She also has black and blue dreadlocks or braids. The male suspect, meanwhile, is described as a black male between 20 and 24 years old and 5 foot 5 inches tall. He has a thin build and short, twisted hair. He has a scar or mark on his left cheek. Anyone with information is asked to please contact the Oakland Police immediately.
Representatives from Colorado's Douglas County Sheriff's Office and the U.S. Marshals Service released a major update in a devastating family kidnapping case this week, announcing that a missing boy who had previously been featured on the show Unsolved Mysteries has been safely located after several years thanks to a chance police encounter. The case began in November of 2017 when 40-year-old Rabia Khalid failed to show up for a scheduled custody hearing in Atlanta, Georgia. Khalid and her former husband, Abdul Khan, had been in a bitter and ongoing dispute over their then 7-year-old son, Aziz. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the custody situation between the two started off amicably enough. After the couple divorced in 2014, Khalid moved from New Orleans to Atlanta with her new husband, 42-year-old Elliot Burgess. The pair took Aziz with them, but with the understanding that Abdul would still be able to see Aziz as much as possible. Despite the more than 400-mile distance, the father began traveling to Atlanta every other weekend to spend time with his son. In his words, quote, "I made my whole work schedule around Aziz. I'd visit him every other weekend, and I would bring him to New Orleans so he could be with his family." However, as time passed, Khalid reportedly began making it more and more difficult for the father and son to see each other. Eventually, Abdul decided he'd had enough, and he started fighting for his parental rights. The court proceedings went on for quite a while, but according to authorities, it became increasingly clear to Khalid that she was going to lose. So, right around Thanksgiving of 2017, she and Burgess allegedly packed up all of their things, took Aziz, and fled. For more than 7 years, Abdul and his extended family desperately searched for Aziz. Police also attempted to locate Khalid and Burgess, but they managed to stay one step ahead. The two were described as highly skilled and very smart. Khalid was an epidemiologist and had a master's in public health, while Burgess had a background in neuroscience. In addition to law enforcement, multiple other organizations and agencies chipped in over the years to do what they could to help find Aziz. This included the previously mentioned National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, but also shows like Unsolved Mysteries, who featured Aziz's case in one of their episodes. However, in the end, it was a totally chance encounter that would bring the answers everyone was looking for. On February 23rd, officers from the Douglas County Sheriff's Office in Colorado were called about a possible burglary in progress at a home in the community of Highlands Ranch. The house was vacant and was listed for sale, but the actual owner apparently noticed suspicious activity there. When police arrived, they found 4 people, 2 children and 2 adults. The adults, a man and a woman, were found on their way out of the house, and when asked what they were doing, claimed that they were associated with the property's realtor. Upon further questioning, though, the couple's story unraveled, and after several hours of diligent police work, authorities realized that they had stumbled across something big. The man and woman were Rabia Khalid and Elliot Burgess. One of the 2 children inside their vehicle was Aziz, now 14 years old. Khalid and Burgess were arrested on charges of second-degree kidnapping, forgery, identity theft, providing false information to authorities and trespassing. Both are now being held on $1 million bond. Aziz and his sibling, meanwhile, have temporarily been placed into protective custody. In a statement released by Abdul Khan and the rest of Aziz's extended family this week, they stated in part, quote, "We're overwhelmed with joy that Aziz has finally been found. We want to thank everyone for their support over the last 7 years. We specifically want to recognize the Douglas County Sheriff's Office for their exceptional work in solving this case. Now, as we navigate the next steps, we ask for privacy so that we can move forward as a family and heal together."
Authorities in Middlesex County, New Jersey say that a local man is facing murder charges this week after he bizarrely walked into a police station out of the blue and confessed to killing his wife. According to reports, the whole thing began shortly before 12:15 p.m. on February 28 when the man in question, later identified as 60-year-old Ashraf Tawfiq, walked into the headquarters of the East Brunswick Police Department. After approaching the front desk, he used a translation app on his phone to tell officers that he had just killed his wife and that he was there to turn himself in. When police responded to the man's Yorktown Road residence a short time later, sadly, they learned that Tawfiq was telling the truth. His wife, 58-year-old Marcel Botros, was found unresponsive inside and quickly pronounced dead. While almost no additional details have been released about the situation at this time, court papers state that Marcel was viciously stabbed multiple times. However, no information about a possible motive was included. Tawfiq was arrested at the police station after turning himself in and has since been charged with murder as well as 2 counts of unlawful possession of a weapon. The situation is still under investigation, and anyone with information about the crime is asked to reach out to either the East Brunswick Police or the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office.
A pair of Brazilian travelers who were planning to go on vacation ended up with an unexpected layover in jail last week after they showed up to their flight late and were denied boarding and allegedly responded by attacking airport staff. The whole thing reportedly began shortly after 8:30 a.m. on March 2nd when the suspects, 40-year-old Rafael Sarafe Novaes and 29-year-old Beatriz Rapoport de Campos Maya, arrived at Florida's Miami International Airport. The engaged couple were expecting to board a flight to Cancun, Mexico, where they had booked a vacation. However, things did not go as planned. After showing up at the airport less than 25 minutes before their American Airlines flight was scheduled to take off, the pair were told that they were too late and that boarding had already finished. That's when the couple apparently flew into a violent rage. Footage shot by equally concerned and amused bystanders shows Novaes and Maya after they allegedly attempted to force their way onto the flight, pushing past airport staff and towards the jet bridge despite no trespassing signs and repeated verbal commands to stop. In the video, police and security can be seen struggling with both of them after they are accused of pushing at least 2 people and throwing coffee on them. After being restrained, Novaes and Maya were arrested and could be seen in later footage being perp-walked in handcuffs to a waiting police car on the airport's tarmac. Much to the relief of all of the other passengers on the flight, they were successfully able to travel to Cancun afterwards, though they arrived there about half an hour late. Upon being taken into custody, the pair were both charged with 2 counts of battery and trespassing on property after warning. Novaes was further charged with resisting arrest. Despite this, following their releases from jail, the couple remained defiant. During an interview with local media, they framed the situation as if they'd done nothing wrong, denying throwing the coffee and calling the airline employees liars. In Maya's telling of events, the coffee simply fell out of her hands. Even if this is true, if you ask me, the pair didn't exactly come off as sympathetic characters, especially when they started dropping lines like this.
I'm from Brazil. I'm from Brazil. I'm a doctor in Brazil. Like, what's supposed to happen? This is fair? Nobody threw coffee. Just the coffee fall. The coffee just fall. And the lady that said that I threw her coffee is a liar.
Following the incident, American Airlines put out a statement saying in part, quote, "Acts of violence are not tolerated by American Airlines, and we are committed to working closely with law enforcement in their investigation." Reports also point out that committing acts of intentional violence in an international airport is a federal crime, punishable by up to 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. What started out as the happiest day of their lives for a newlywed Illinois couple unexpectedly turned into an awful tragedy earlier this month, when just minutes after tying the knot, they were informed their house had been destroyed. According to reports, the whole thing began on the afternoon of February 15th, when Tom Davis and Eleni Vretos were celebrating their marriage with friends and family. The bride and groom had just finished their wedding ceremony at a local church in the town of Cicero, when suddenly they were told that the unthinkable had happened. The house where they were living, just a short distance away on the 2200 block of Central Avenue, had just exploded. The newlyweds ran there immediately, but sadly, there was nothing they could do. They both watched, with Eleni still in her wedding dress, as what remained of their beloved home burned to the ground. Firefighters and emergency responders worked for quite some time to extinguish the blaze, which spread to a neighboring building and displaced 11 other families. By the time it was finally put out, there was essentially nothing left of Tom and Eleni's home. In addition to losing all of their belongings, their 6 cats were inside the residence at the time, all of whom perished in the fire. As an investigation was launched, it quickly became clear what had happened. Shortly before the explosion, one of the guests at the wedding, 31-year-old Anthony Avila Puebla, was seen slipping out of the ceremony and parking his car about a block from the residence. Surveillance footage showed him going in and out of the house several times, carrying large jugs of what was believed to be gasoline and other flammable liquids. The blast happened not long after Puebla was seen entering the house for the final time. The 31-year-old was also killed during the explosion and fire, and his body was later retrieved from the wreckage. No motive behind the man's disturbing actions had been confirmed at this time, though it said that Puebla was in a relationship with someone else that lived there. Adding to the devastation of the whole incident is the fact that the residence was apparently Eleni's childhood home. She had grown up there, and her family had owned the property for decades. As if this weren't awful enough, according to the couple, because they were in the process of remodeling and transferring home insurance at the time, they have no coverage for what has happened. A GoFundMe set up for the pair reads in part, quote, "This home was more than just a house. It was where Eleni grew up, where she and Tom had moved in to start their new life together, and where the family had built countless memories over the years. Now they have lost everything, their belongings, their keepsakes, and the place they called home." At the time of this recording, Cicero police say that the situation is still under investigation. A Texas man found out the hard way that it's not actually fun to literally be worth your weight in gold when he panicked after getting caught for a brazen jewelry store robbery, and he allegedly decided to swallow the evidence. The whole thing began on the afternoon of February 26th when the suspect, 32-year-old Jathan Gilder, walked into a Tiffany & Co. store in Orlando's Mall of Millennia. Upon entering, he told staff that he was a representative of an unspecified NBA player, and he was there to negotiate a large purchase. After being escorted to a private viewing room, Gilder was shown several pieces of diamond jewelry, among them a ring and 2 sets of earrings. All told, the items were worth nearly $1.4 million. However, as I'm sure you've already guessed, Gilder was not in fact there for legitimate reasons. He was posing as a rep for a high roller simply so that employees would be duped into bringing out the valuables. As they were in the middle of discussing a wire transfer, the 32-year-old suddenly got up from his seat, snatched all of the jewelry, and ran for the door. While the exit was locked and the employees quickly began to struggle with Gilder, he was nothing if not persistent. After reefing on one of the exit doors long enough, he was able to pry it open so there was enough room for him to escape. Employees managed to get the diamond ring back during the confrontation, but he still managed to make off with the 2 sets of earrings worth approximately $770,000. Unfortunately for Gilder, though, thanks to the mall's extensive network of surveillance cameras, as well as public CCTV cameras, police were quickly able to identify the vehicle he was driving. He was pulled over about 6 hours later as he was speeding back to his home in Texas. While police looked in Gilder's SUV, they found plenty of evidence that he was the suspect they were looking for, including the clothes he was allegedly wearing during the robbery and the price tags for the stolen items. However, the actual jewelry was nowhere to be found. Well, authorities soon figured out why, when after being taken into custody, Gilder spontaneously asked, quote, "Am I going to be charged for what's in my stomach?" It turned out that Gilder had swallowed the earrings right before his arrest, something that was eventually confirmed with medical imaging. The decision was one the 32-year-old apparently came to quickly regret, as he was also allegedly overheard by another officer saying, quote, "I should have thrown them out the window." Gilder has now been charged with multiple offenses, including first-degree grand theft. According to news sources, this is far from his first foray into robbery. Included in his lengthy rap sheet is a nearly identical incident from 2022 where he allegedly robbed a Tiffany store in Houston. That time, he did not swallow the valuables, though. Speaking of which, which, arguably the worst job of all, is going to be for the person unlucky enough to have to retrieve the stolen diamonds. Police reports note, quote, "These foreign objects will need to be collected by cops after they are passed through Gilder's system." Authorities in San Diego County, California say that they were investigating the aftermath of an awful tragedy this week after a local mother was allegedly killed by her own son, and her body was found in the trunk of her car following a dangerous chase. The whole thing began sometime on the afternoon of February 25th, when the victim, 51-year-old Jamison Webster, went to visit her 24-year-old son, Richard Leyva. Richard was staying at a Motel 6 in the city of El Cajon. Jamison was only expected to be there a little while. However, when she failed to return after several hours, her other son, Xavier, began to worry. After traveling to the motel himself to see what was going on, Xavier was met with a horrifying sight. His mother was lying motionless in the trunk of her Hyundai Sonata. Xavier attempted to confront his brother Richard and demanded to know what had happened. However, as this was happening, Richard reportedly got into the Hyundai and began driving off. Xavier was hit by the car in the process and dragged, though thankfully was not seriously injured. He called police moments later. Authorities were able to track Richard down, but the 24-year-old refused to cooperate. He fled when officers attempted to conduct a traffic stop, leading to a dangerous pursuit that only ended after Richard slammed into two other vehicles on the road. Even then, police reportedly had to deploy a taser to take him into custody. While thankfully, no one in the two vehicles that were hit was injured. The same couldn't be said for Jamison Webster. When officers looked in the trunk of the Hyundai, it was revealed that she was dead. It's now alleged that Jamison was fatally strangled by Richard sometime after arriving at the motel to check in on him that day. The exact circumstances of the killing have not been confirmed at this time, though chilling surveillance footage at the business has apparently provided police with crucial information. The video reportedly shows Jamison arriving at the motel, then briefly leaving before returning with some items. Disturbingly, the next time she is seen is hours later, when cameras capture Richard dragging her body by the ankles towards her vehicle before putting her body in the trunk. As for a motive behind the crime, again, nothing has been confirmed, though it has been widely reported that Richard Leyva has a previous history of mental illness. According to local media sources, the 24-year-old was diagnosed with acute psychosis in 2021 and was later diagnosed with an unspecified bipolar disorder after being taken into custody for threatening police with a knife. At least one report we came across also stated that Richard had recently left a mental health facility the same day that he was admitted. After leaving, he checked into the Motel 6 where the awful situation unfolded. Jamison's ex-husband, Mike Webster, filled in further details during an interview with local media, telling reporters that they had been warned in the past about Richard's behavior. He said in part, quote, "We had cops come over to the house to arrest him because he was acting crazy, making threats. One of the officers told us, if you don't get help, somebody's going to die." It appears that the family did try to get help for Richard, though it's claimed that he kept being released anytime he was taken to a hospital or mental health facility. The 24-year-old is now facing charges including murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and evading law enforcement. If convicted, he is looking at 28 years to life in prison. Authorities in Waukesha County, Wisconsin say that a local teen is in custody this week after a series of suspicious events led to the discovery of his mother and stepfather dead inside of their family home. The case began on the morning of February 28th when police were contacted by at least two different people who said that they were concerned about a local family. The first call was made by a woman named Judith Mayer, who said that she hadn't been able to get a hold of her son Donald for several days. Judith explained that Donald and his wife, Tatiana Cassip, lived with Tatiana's 17-year-old son Nikita. No one had been able to reach any of them and were growing increasingly worried. Even before that, the last few conversations she and other family members had with Donald had been over text. In these messages, he had told them he was very sick and would be taking a break from social media. The second call police received that morning was from a school resource officer at Waukesha West High School who expressed similar concerns. The officer informed the sheriff's office that Nikita Cassip, who was a student there, hadn't been seen in roughly 2 weeks. This was very out of the ordinary, especially because prior to this, Nikita had a perfect attendance record. Upon further investigation, police uncovered similar stories from others connected to the family. Donald Mayer's manager said that he had been in contact with him exclusively through text messages since February 13th. In the messages, Donald had claimed that he was too sick to talk on the phone. While speaking with the family's postal carrier, authorities also learned that their mail had been put on a vacation hold. The most alarming information, though, came from neighbors of the family. One resident told police that they had seen Nikita Cassip several days earlier driving his stepfather's Volkswagen Atlas. This was despite the fact that Nikita did not have a driver's license. He was with the family's small black dog, but there was no sign of his mother or stepfather anywhere. After learning all of this, officers from the Waukesha County Sheriff's Office conducted a welfare check at the family's residence on Cider Hills Drive. Shortly after entering, they made an awful discovery. Both Tatiana and Donald were dead inside the home. The mother and stepfather were each found under piles of clothes and linens in separate areas of the house. According to a criminal complaint that was released to the public this week, Tatiana's face was, quote, blackened from decomposition with dried blood on the floor around her. It's believed that she was shot at least once and had a bullet wound to her right shoulder area. Donald, meanwhile, suffered some kind of wound to the back of his head. Using cell phone and vehicle data, investigators were able to track Donald's Volkswagen Atlas, which it turned out had been on quite the journey over the past few days. The vehicle had traveled through multiple states, including Illinois, Nebraska, Colorado, and Kansas. It was Kansas where the SUV was finally found, with Nikita Kasip still behind the wheel. The 17-year-old was pulled over in the city of Waukesha late on February 28th, roughly an 850-mile drive from his mother and stepfather's home. At the time of the traffic stop, the family dog was found in the vehicle, as well as Donald's Smith & Wesson .357 Magnum. Nikita was arrested on charges of operating a motor vehicle without the owner's consent and theft of movable property. At the time of this recording, though, he has yet to be charged with anything related to his mother and stepfather's deaths. Police say that the whole case is still under investigation, and no further details have been released at this time. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.